Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 85, Annie and the Magician, part 11. And if you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. And here we go. The next day, Anastasia was working in the kitchens, but her mind was preoccupied. A deep part of her knew this situation was temporary, and that it was like returning home one time home before a long journey away. During the day, Willem Frank came and asked to see her. "I need the key to Quarere's room, so I may look for his will." "No need, sir. I have his will here." "You do? Why did you say nothing yesterday?" Anastasia had already decided a good part of the truth would serve here. "Cupigula, sir. He's a powerful magician, and my master thought that he was poisoned by him. He had no proof to bring to the king, but he asked me very specifically to get the will to you alone, away from Cupigula or anyone from his camp." Willem looked at her appraisingly. "I see. Well done, then. Let's see it." She brought it out from her inside pocket. "Let's have a quick look, shall we?" Frank said. Anastasia shrugged. The contents would not change if read here or in the kitchens or at Frank's desk. "Tricky," Frank said. "It appears you are his sole heir." Anastasia just looked levelly at him. Frank shifted. "Tricky simply because this will was given to me by you, and it shows you as the heir. But let's see," he continued as she continued to stare. "Well, Quarere was always a smart man. Looks like my boss, Leon, witnessed this will. In that case, I see little issue in getting it approved." "Excellent," Anastasia said. "You were doubly fortunate, then," Frank said. "In buying out your contract and freeing you, it gave you status to get Quarere's estate. You would not have been able to otherwise." Anastasia pondered this. She didn't think that was the main reason that Quarere had bought her contract, but it was an additional reason. He could, if she had worked out as his apprentice, legally hand down his equipment and money to her. And he had. There was the question of her age, but she felt it was something she could work out. She had never had parents, and a child without parents was, in most respects, an adult. Besides, no one alive knew the extent of her powers. Her mind would be her best tool here, following Quarere's advice, but that didn't mean she would ignore her magic. If she was wondering when Cupigula would be coming around, she didn't have to wait long. Whether she was on his list of things to do already, or had heard through his grapevine that Anastasia was Quarere's heir, he came the day after she spoke to Frank Willem. He glided into the kitchens, sparing only a glance at Cook, who did not argue against the interruption to their work. Anastasia, looking as much like her old self as she could, was peeling potatoes, and looked up at Cupigula, who would have towered over her even if she were standing up. She said nothing. "Anastasia, Quarere's apprentice?" he said. It was not a question. Anastasia waited. "You are Quarere's heir? Not that it seems he had all that much to inherit. You have not been with him long." Again, all statements, no questions. "Are you writing his life story?" Anastasia asked. Cupigula sneered. "His life was hardly worthy of writing down. I'd rather live a life worth remembering anyway. But I have questions for you." "Do you?" "What had you learned from Quarere in your weeks with him?" Anastasia appeared to consider this, though she had already prepared an answer for this question. "I can do an ethering." "And what finished ethers can you make or use?" "Quarere did not teach me that. I watched him, but was never given a chance to do it myself." She had to cop to a certain amount of learning. She didn't want him thinking of her as a possible ethering slave, but rather someone who might have picked up enough information on her own to be a threat. He looked at her, but she could tell he was sizing her up, far more than he had before. "Make no move against me, and I will leave you to your kitchens," Cupigula said. "Of course," Anastasia replied. Cupigula left, his long frame leaving a long shadow before it, too, exited the kitchens. Anastasia released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding in. The next few weeks felt like she was holding her head down, a mouse being still lest a hawk attack it. Quarere had been right. With him dead, Cupigula seemed to be making preparations to leave, probably for Gardmore. She went up every few days to reapply the ether to the trunks, being exceptionally careful when she did so that she was not followed or observed. It was the only ether that she carried with her, ever, and then only on such occasions. At other times, it was hidden in the ticking of her thin mattress. She found that, by looking very carefully, she could in fact see the effects of the hiding ether, at least a bit. When it weakened, there was a slight shimmer that started to alert her that less than a day was left before the trunks would again be visible. It was not easy to see, even with practice, but it helped. It let her supply of ether stretch, not wasted on reapplications that weren't needed. Then, one day, like a fresh breeze rolling through the castle, Cupigula was gone. She was somehow aware of it before it became news. But once she had confirmed it, she felt light, as though she might bounce into the air. And even then, she remained cautious. Cupigula had likely left spies behind, and though she had seen nothing suspicious, it did not mean that he had judged her harmless. He may have someone checking up on her still. She made her plans, carefully. First, she got the money Quarere had hidden. She didn't give a juggler's cuss about the will. She had all of Quarere's ethering equipment that she needed, and he had told her where he had hidden his money, now her money. The will was just a means of cover in case anyone tried to stop her. The money had been hidden, buried near a tree that Anastasia had once pointed out to Quarere because of its odd shape. Its unusually gnarled trunk had reminded her of a duck, and the money was hidden near the duck's right foot. She had considered taking only some of it, but thought better of it. Instead, she brought her ether and put the money in the trunks, reapplying the hiding ether, as she didn't know what the effects of disturbing the trunks would be, but suspected it would break the spell, or at least shorten it. The money she kept was enough for her purposes. She had also taken a single vial of another ether and kept that close to her. She then brought the money to the market. There was a merchant there she knew. His name was Alda, and he was a large man with large appetites. He was greedy, but he was also cowardly. He had more guards for his merchant train whenever he traveled than any other. Alda's wares included spices, and Anastasia had sometimes been asked by Cook to obtain some for feasts when he knew the merchant was in town. The haggling was minimum, for Cook knew the prices well, and Anastasia was not allowed to come back with anything other than the proper spices in the proper amounts. She prepared her ether and approached Alda. "Are you heading back to Gardmore soon?" she asked. "Annie," Alda said. "You want spice?" "Not today," Anastasia said, "but I may want to book passage." "I don't usually do passengers," Alda said. "I'm small, though I will be bringing a couple of trunks along." You're booking passage to Gardmore for yourself? What do you want there?" "Is it important? I need to go, and I'd like you to take me." "I see," Alda said, stroking his beard. "I can pay some and help carry my weight." "Oh, how? Cooking?" "That, and," she held out her arm, "I can help guard." "Guard?" Alda laughed. "You?" She touched her hand to his arm. The fire ether, the smallest possible dose, scorched his arm. He pulled it back with a yelp. "Hey, girl, that hurt." "That was a fraction of what I can do. So you see, I can help protect your caravan, even better than usual. Help cook, and even pay a bit." "I would charge 30 gold weights for passage all that way." "Even if I'm working?" 20, then." 20. Anastasia held out her hand to shake it. Alda looked at it with trepidation, but then shook it, and it did not burn him. "We leave in 3 days." "That will do." Anastasia turned and walked back toward the castle and the kitchens, knowing it would be one of the last times she ever did so. And she made her way to Gardmore, and there truly became a great magician, and faced off against Cupigula. But that is a story for later. And that's the end of the episode for this week. So, obviously, lots to be still told here at some point, but I wanted to give myself a chance to tell another story, and then at some point possibly we can come back to Annie, now Anastasia. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or again, hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. And we also do it as a YouTube video, and then the video's audio gets edited down to the podcast. So it's available on iTunes and a few other standard podcast platforms, and you can also listen to it on CryptoBiography.com directly. Anyway, have a good week, and we'll see you next Sunday. Words and music, copyright 2019, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved.